Hello, exceptional students of Mrs. Whitney. So we're going to start Unit 2, which involves rational numbers. And Lesson 2.1 is all about rational numbers. It's really just kind of understanding what they are. So a rational number is any number that I can represent as some number over another number. If I can do that division and come up with a number, then it's a rational number. So the other alternative of that is irrational numbers. Pi is a good example. It never, ever, ever repeats, and it goes on forever and ever and ever. And so you can't represent it as a divided by b, because if you take the circumference and divide it by the diameter, you end up dividing forever and ever and ever and ever, and you never stop. So a rational number comes from the word ratio. It means that you can write, again, so you can write A over B, and they have meanings. So when you see anything that is one number over another, it has three meanings. It can be a division problem, 8 divided by 24. It can be a fraction, 8/24, or it can be a ratio, 8 hours to 24 hours. So we'll talk a lot about those three things whenever you see something that's a fraction. So again, a rational number, and any whole number, by the way, is that number divided by 1. So if we continue along, rational numbers, and here's a kind of a pie chart showing you where, not a pie chart, but a chart showing you where everybody lives. Rational numbers is everybody. That's not an irrational number. Whole numbers are your counting numbers, and integers are your positive and negative whole numbers, and then you have rational numbers, which are all the rest. So let's talk about converting fractions into decimals. So if I have -2 and 1/4, so I have -2 and 1/4. The -2 doesn't change. We know that our decimal is going to look like -2 and then a dot something else. So really we need to deal with this 1/4. And that 1/4 is 1 divided by 4. And now it's just long division from last year. For this particular section, you may use a calculator to do this, but you must know that it is the 1 divided by the 4. If you come out with a whole number and then ... it means that you did something wrong, because 1/4 is less than 1. So there's no way that I can have a whole number, the decimal point, and then the rest of the number. So 4 does not go into 1. So back to my division. So that's 0. And I put my decimal point just gets carried to the roof. And then remember, I can add zeros to my heart's content, because it means that I have 0 tenths, 0 hundredths, 0 thousandths, etc. So we know that 4 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. And then I'm going to subtract. And 10 subtract 8 is 2. That's Brita. She's eating too fast. I carry down the 0 and I get 20. 4 goes into 20 5 times. Then 5 times 4 is 20. And so I end with a 0. So I then just take, I'm going to change colors. I take this and I just move it to be after the decimal point. So I end up with -2 and 25 hundredths. And then another way to think about this when you have fourths is if you have 1/4, sometimes it's called 1/4. And if you have 1/4 in your pocket, you have 25 cents. And it's negative because our fraction was negative. All right, let's go back and look at our second example, which is 5/11, or 5 divided by 11. By the way, when you take down the notes, I expect that you're writing all of this out, not just the answer, because it won't help you. So remember, this is 5 divided by 11. So again, I'm going to put my decimal point up on the roof, because I know that 11 cannot go into 5. So I'm going to add a 0. So 11 goes into 54 times. 4 times 11 is 44. And 50, subtract 44, and I get 6, because I have to borrow. So 10 subtract 4 is 6. I'm going to carry down another 0. I'm going to carry down the 0. And 11 into 60 is 5. 5 times 11 is 55. And then I end up with 5 again. Carry down the 0. 11 goes into 50 4 times. 4 times 11 is 44. Subtract 44 from 50, and I end up with 6. At this point, you should notice something going on here. Carry down the 0. 11 into 60 is 5. So this 4 and the 5 are repeating. We call this a repeating decimal. So I would write this way. Oh dear, I've lost my cursor. Okay, so I would write it, the answer would be 0, because it's less than 1, decimal point, 45 hundredths. And to let people know that that 45 goes on and on and on forever, I put this bar over the part that repeats. So that would be 45 repeating. So 45 hundredths repeating. It's kind of tricky. Okay, writing a decimal as a fraction. This is way easier because if you say it correctly, then you've written it already for yourself. So if I write, so negative 0, and remember this is the tenths place, tenths, and this is the hundredths place. Remember, I'm writing it down, so you should be writing it in your notes. So I would say this is negative 26 hundredths. Well, that would be negative 26 hundredths. I would just write it over 100. I don't have to really think about that too hard. If I say my decimals correctly, they write themselves. Well, it says to be in the simplest form. So 26 and 100 are both even, so I know that I can divide them by 2. So 26 divided by 2 and 100 divided by 2, I end up with negative. 26 divided by 2 is 13. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So I end up with negative 13 hundredths. Not too bad. Remember, don't forget the negative sign. Okay. Oh, sorry. Negative, Mr. Whitney says from the other room, it's negative 13/50. Sorry, guys. Okay, so example number 3, ordering rational numbers. So I have a table of an angular fish, a squid, a shark, and a whale. And I want to know which of the sea creatures are deeper than the whale. Well, 13 tenths. I know, so negative 13 tenths is really negative 1 3/10. Right? 10 into 13 is 1 with 3 left over, so you have 1 3/10. Negative 2 1/5, I can convert the 1/5 to 2/10, right? If I multiply the 1 by 2 and the 5 by 2, I end up with 2/10. So I end up with negative 2 2/10. Again, converting back and forth, if you say your fractions and your decimals correctly, is trivial. I'm going to skip this guy for a second. And this is already in decimal form. So 2/11, that's the only one I have to do some hard math for. So we know that it's 2 divided by 11. Decimal point goes up on the roof. Add some zeros to help us out. 11 goes into 20 once. I get 1 times 11 is 11. Subtract, I get 9. Bring down the 0. 11 goes into 98 times. So 8 times 11 is 88. And you'll notice I'm back to getting a 2 again. And since I'm only bringing down zeros, that's going to go on forever and ever. So I know that this is negative 18 hundredths. And it's repeating, so I put the hat over it. So it wants to know which of the sea creatures are deeper than the whale. Well, let's see here. The whale is at negative 8/10. And remember that when the numbers, in order for them to be going down, So is this closer to 0 or farther away from 0 than 8/10? It's closer to 0, so we know it's not the shark. So we know that the anglerfish and the squid are both deeper than the whale. Thanks for listening.